I'm sure that at the very least, most of you are familiar with memes like this. Memes that kind of like call into question the validity of dinosaur reconstructions and sort of poke fun at the idea that we're reconstructing them correctly. A lot of them are, of course, done in good fun. Like, I completely acknowledge the fact that I'm sure not many of them are meant to be taken seriously. But that does not stop people from taking them seriously. Believe me, as a science communicator, I have seen all kinds of different comments. Many people will source memes like this as their criticism for a dinosaur reconstruction. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've looked in the comments section of a dinosaur video and I've seen, well, that could be wrong. I mean, look at a hippo skull. So today, I want to talk about these memes. I want to talk about why memes like this are just incredibly flawed and certainly should not be used as valid criticism for dinosaur reconstructions. Full disclosure before we get into it, though. I am not saying that we know every little thing about dinosaurs. Of course, we don't. There is probably so much that we don't know about their overall appearance and, of course, their behaviors. I mean, soft tissue very rarely preserves. But what I'm saying here is that I think memes like this kind of look at it from the wrong angle. And I'm going to show you why right here. Starting off with this meme right here. The x-ray of a beaver's tail makes us wonder if we've reconstructed dinosaurs correctly. This is another common one that people like to share around and, use it as evidence that dinosaur reconstructions are likely far off from what the real life animals were like. But I don't think that it's a good comparison, and I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this because, of course, I've already made videos about this. But the reason why this is not a good analog is because beavers actually do have structures in their tails that allow them to support this paddle over here. Those being these little prongs right here. Those do support the tail that a beaver has. And dinosaurs do not have the same structure, which means that, of course, dinosaurs did not have paddle tails like a beaver or a platypus. Because, yes, platypus do have the very same thing. That's a little thing that's known as comparative anatomy. What we do is we take a look at the structures that are present right here and compare them to the structures of the animals that once existed. And if they match up, then you can reasonably say that a structure that, like, say, a beaver has was likely present in dinosaurs or any other extinct animal. But because that structure is not present, then it's really not too likely because, again, this paddle doesn't really have the support that it needs in the vertebrae. So yeah, I just think that this is a bad example right here. Or the very famous hippo meme that I've brought up quite a bit. This has always been, well, not always, but it's been a flawed meme for quite a while now. So basically, it's very simple. You have the skull of the animal, hippo skull right here, the artist's depiction of the animal in a paleontology book right there, which, by the way, the art right here is really, really cool, and the animal in question, which of course is vastly different from what we see right here. That's not really a good argument at either. Obviously, it's bringing the practice of shrink wrapping to light, which has been a problem in the past for paleontology. If you look at a lot of or earlier reconstructions of dinosaurs, yeah, a lot of them were shrink wrapped. But that's not a practice that is applied today. See, we can determine what the basic shape of an animal's face looked like because there are things like muscle attachment points present on the skull. Hippos do have attachment points for lips and cheeks and jaw muscles back here that can be seen on the skull. So it certainly makes sense that the hippo has that. The same goes for like dinosaurs, for example. And dinosaurs, they actually don't have the proper attachment points in the snout, which means that they wouldn't have the proper muscles to move, say, lips around, which means that if dinosaurs had lips, they would be fixed, meaning that a reconstruction like this is accurate and this is not shrink wrapped. Just because the skull is thin, that does not mean it's shrink wrapped. Allosaurus has a very thin skull, so it makes sense that the animal's head would be thin anyway. And you can't just apply movable lips to it because it can't move those lips because the skull does not have the proper attachment points for those lips. And so, if it did have lips, they would look very similar to this, which is basically like lizard lips. Uh, as in, most likely the reptilian like lips, where they're just simply fixed in place and can't move at all. So, yes, this is an accurate reconstruction of Allosaurus. Now, some folks have redone the meme in a way that really like shows how flawed that meme is and why a meme like that should not be used as your entire argument for why dinosaur reconstructions are incorrect. Here we have the skull how paleontologists would reconstruct the animal and the animal in question. So, yeah, that is, of course, a crocodile skull, and here is the real life animal. Very similar to one another because, in a way, reptiles are kind of shrink wrapped. They're not too shrink wrapped, obviously, but their skulls look very similar to their outward faces, I guess. Crocodiles and many other reptiles don't have the proper muscles to have movable lips, just like dinosaurs, as I mentioned. Um, Crocodiles don't even really have much in the way of lips because of the fact that it doesn't have the extra attachment points. Those muscles are not present. And so the animal's skull looks very similar to the actual animal. So, yeah, that right there really shows how flawed that meme is. But there's also this one right here that I also really liked. So this one was kind of recreated, and it shows the skull, of course, how the paleontologist might reconstruct the animal based on its muscle attachments, ecology, and related living animals. How some random person on the internet might reconstruct the animal based on noticing one similar feature to a similar animal, which I assume is like a walrus or something. And the animal. Now, here's the one that we really want to focus on here because, yes, this is how dinosaur reconstructions are done nowadays. They're not just coming up with things out of thin air. A lot of it is just being like you're being an investigator. You're trying to figure out you're using comparative anatomy. You're using something called phylogenetic bracketing to figure out how the animal would look. And yes, you would look at the muscle attachment points and you would likely get a lot closer to the real life animal. But obviously, there are some things that you would not be able to tell for sure, like the ear shape. The ears are portrayed as absolutely huge on this one right here, whereas the real life hippo is smaller. And that's because, yes, ears don't really fossilize too well. So, yeah, something like that would simply just boil down to artist interpretation. And also, you have seen things like the lower tooth over here, kind of like sticking out as well. But again, the overall shape is very similar to what you would find, and that again, that is precisely how reconstructions are done. Very different from just making a reptilian monster off of a a mammal skull. Or how about this one? Since soft tissue is not preserved in fossils, we can't rule out the possibility the Spinosaurus looked like this. And we can actually rule out the possibility. And the reason for that, again, is because of muscle attachment points. Muscles and tendons and all of that stuff anchor to the skeleton. And you can see where they anchor to the skeleton. The idea that Spinosaurus had a hump has been proposed in the past, and so as a result, there has been some analysis done on it. We'll use this meme to talk a little bit more about that. Obviously, this one is very much meant to be a meme because, ideal to grab and yeet lesser dinosaurs, but still, people do take it like for real. They take it seriously. Now, we can rule out the fact that Spinosaurus did have a hump because of bison neural spines up here. Obviously, bison have tall neural spines that help support their hump, which is very similar to the tall neural spines that are present on Spinosaurus. But bison neural spines actually do have attachment points for that hump. The hump is not just randomly there, ladies and gentlemen. It is actually anchored to the skeleton. Spinosaurus and its neural spines lack that. So, Spinosaurus did not have a hump, especially not a hump this astronomically huge. The evidence that we have supports the idea that Spinosaurus had a sail instead of a hump. So, no, this is, of course, this is something that we can rule out given what we know from the available fossil material. Or how about this one? That whole penguin long neck thing got me thinking. Yeah, no, this one, penguins, of course, they have quite a few feathers and whatnot, and they do have a longer neck underneath those feathers and fat and muscles and all of that. Sauropods likely would not be able to get away with the very same thing. The reason being they are huge, or they were huge. Unfortunately, they're not around anymore, but sauropods were the largest land animals to ever exist. When you're a big animal, one problem that you encounter is overheating. I mean, today's elephants already have issues with it, and they're not nearly as large as the largest sauropods. And so then, if you put that much feathering or that much fat that just like expands it to an unrealistic level, that's probably a death sentence for the animal. So, This is comparative anatomy, which again is a good tool. You're comparing the neck of a sauropod to the neck of a penguin, but what's important to do when you're doing that is not to just eyeball it and then make it a conclusion. You have to understand why this guy can get away with it and why this guy can't get away with it. And the same goes for practically everything else we've looked at. Like you can't just look at a hippo skull and say, "Wow, we probably get dinosaurs wrong." You need to look at the hippo skull and say, ask yourself, why does it look this way? Like, all of these extra bits that are poking out, why are they there? Are they there to anchor muscles? Most likely. And like I've mentioned, there are ways for us to tell with the available fossil material on dinosaurs. This is an Allosaurus humerus, which is, of course, the upper arm bone. You'll notice there is a sort of lip right here, or a little bit of a crest positioned right here. That is known as the delta pectoral crest, and I'm sure you can guess what it's for. Muscle attachments. It's an anchor point for muscles. It's an anchor point for its shoulder muscles, and it's an anchor point for its chest muscles. And you can determine how large those muscles likely were by looking at how large this attachment point was. Again, muscle placement is not random. Tendon placement is not random. Those things are absolutely things that we can determine by looking at the fossils, even though it is soft tissue. It's obviously not an absolutely foolproof and perfect system, especially when you have fragmentary dinosaurs, but it's a fantastic start and it gives you a solid foundation. That also brings us to things like this, where people just want to make stuff up. Now, this was done for an April Fool's Day joke back in 2023, as you can see, April 1st, posted by Joe Moama. Indeed. But obviously, again, people still do believe the idea that Tyrannosaurus Rex had wings. Now, I covered this in way more detail in this video right here, so go and check it out if you want to hear me rant about this topic and why it makes no sense. But the basic rundown is that T-Rex did not have wings. Its hands are not built like wings. It actually has two individual fingers, as opposed to a fused hand that modern day birds with wings actually have. And this whole idea that a cartilage wing simply, or a cartilage finger, just didn't preserve is silly. Because of the fact that it's a multi-ton dinosaur, and if it had wings that were properly adept at flying, it would need a stronger material than just cartilage. Plus, not to mention, T-Rex lacks a keel, which is an attachment point in the chest of birds that is an attachment point for flight muscles. Because attachment points exist, folks. The skeleton is a very good foundation for the rest of the body. But yeah, go and check out that video if you want to hear more about that. Now, to close this off, I just want to, again, I want to establish that no, we do not know everything. A good example of how we don't know everything is Edmontosaurus. Edmontosaurus has been found with very well preserved specimens that show us that it had things like a fleshy comb. This is something that is not attached to the skeleton. So there was no evidence for it in the actual fossils, in the skeleton, yet the actual animal had it. But that brings me to my next point. These are the wrong criticisms. These are the wrong things to bring up. Instead of saying, like, a beaver tail looks like this, but it looks like this in the x ray, that means we're getting dinosaurs wrong. That's not it. That just wastes time. That is not a good comparison to make. What you should be saying is turkeys have a caruncle, which is a skin structure that would not preserve too easily. Sometimes it might, but for the most part it wouldn't. And it does not attach to the skeleton. That is a good one to bring up because that one is valid, especially considering the fact that turkeys are dinosaurs. So instead of saying things like look at a hippo skull or look at a beaver tail or look at a bison hump, you should be looking at things that actually make sense. Because again, a bison hump, it's attached to the skeleton. All of these muscles that a hippo has, they're attached to the skull. This beaver tail, it's attached to the skeleton. There's evidence for those things in the bones. But again, if you say things like, look at the waddle of a turkey, that is valid because there's a good chance that a lot of dinosaurs had something like that. And we might not know how many of them had that. We're barely scratching the surface with Edmontosaurus. Again, a fleshy comb that is not attached to the skeleton has been found on Edmontosaurus. And more recently, a sort of crest on its back on Edmontosaurus annectens has been found as well. Additionally, soft padding on the bottom of its feet, like way larger than we previously thought, has been found as well. Edmontosaurus is kind of like the quintessential idea that dinosaurs had all kinds of soft tissue on the outside of their bodies that simply did not preserve. But that does not extend to the way that the muscles are placed onto the body. Again, we just need to stop wasting our time with saying that we're just getting everything absolutely wrong when that's simply not the case. We have a good basis down. We understand how muscles work. We understand how fat distribution works. So we can't be wasting time with stuff like this when in reality we could just be asking the fun speculative questions. Did T Rex have a waddle similar to a turkey? Obviously, we don't know for sure if it did, but there certainly is a possibility. That's why I don't like to hand wave the idea that, more dinosaurs had feathers than we previously thought. Some people are so quick to say something like, oh, yeah, most dinosaurs didn't have feathers. We simply don't know. Like, honestly, I would not be surprised if even the mightiest sauropods had tiny hair like feathers on its back. But if you're going to be speculative with it, you got to make sure that you ask yourself if it actually makes sense for that specific animal. Sauropods, for example, they would not be able to get away with that much feathering, which means that if sauropods did have feathers, they probably would be very tiny and sparse and hair like. So you can rule out something like this. Just because it's soft tissue and it doesn't preserve doesn't mean that you can reasonably come in and say that they probably look like this, and we can't deny it because that all of this extra stuff does not fossilize. And I mean, look at a penguin. You can't do that. You have to look at the mechanics of an animal, a large, multi-ton, likely warm-blooded animal that lived in a warmer environment, and ask yourself if an animal like that even needs or can get away with something like this. If the answer is no, then it's probably not a good idea to reconstruct the animal like that. Penguins can get away with it because even the largest penguin is significantly smaller than the largest species of sauropod. That's what we can be focusing on. I don't think we should be focusing on stuff like this because I mean, again, everything that was shown in here, these are memes. I understand that. But that does not stop people from believing these and using these as their arguments. I have been doing science communication for years. The same comments show up a lot of people genuinely believing that T Rex had wings, or that Spinosaurus had a hump, or that dinosaurs were running around with beaver tails because they see these memes. They see them and it makes sense to them. So, this was just a little bit of a rant video. I like to rant every once in a while, it's kind of fun. And honestly, these videos have just been fun overall. They've been like a really nice way for me to just talk about these specific topics that I have been or that I am passionate about. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Be sure to let me know what your thoughts are down below. And until next time, thank you so much for watching and have an awesome day.